yes, it is true. I did move out of Warsaw, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. First off, I have to say that Warsaw is an amazing city if you are looking for the right things. I think Warsaw is an amazing place to network, to advance in your career. Ever since I arrived to Warsaw, my opportunities have 10x. It feels like I'm just constantly meeting new people, doing a bunch of different interesting collaborations. I got interviewed by National Geographic, all in Polish, so you guys are gonna see that in a month or so. But if you guys saw my video, why I regretted moving to Warsaw, a lot of my original points still stand. Especially towards the center of the city, it does feel like everybody's in like a status rat race, if that makes sense. There's like this tenseness in the air where everybody's always on the move and always on the go. And I think this is just normal in big cities, especially for capitals, because you have a lot of people coming from the smaller cities or even from other countries like all the Stan countries, Belarus, Ukraine. You have a lot of South Asians coming here as well. You have a lot of people from Turkey, Azerbaijan. Everybody's trying to make it here and survive. And because things have gotten so expensive, especially over the last couple of years, people seem to have to put work over everything else, which I think it's totally understandable. I wanted to move to Warsaw for the summer because I wanted to see what the vibe was like and what that energy was like. It was very exhausting to a certain extent, but also very productive. I was living in the center of Warsaw for about 4 months, and I think that my Polish improved a lot over this time because I was studying Polish a lot. I was watching a lot of Polish TV. I made a lot of advances in my career. I started making music content on Instagram. So I was very inspired. Warsaw as a city is very inspiring, and especially during the summer when, you know, the sun's out all the time, there's just a lot of energy around. However, it depends on what you really want out of life. Over the summer, it's great to constantly be out and socializing and meeting people, and I really liked working. But now that winter is around the corner, all the negatives that I had about Warsaw particularly revolved around community. I had such an amazing time in Kraków. Not only is the city great, but just the building that I lived in was amazing. It was a student dorm, co-living kind of situation. Sometimes it was annoying because you had a lot of younger students like partying and making a lot of noise, but there was a lot of older people there that I made genuine, deep connections with. More than I love the city of Kraków, because I think Warsaw is an objectively better city, I really fell in love with the community that I had in Kraków. And that's what I felt like I was missing when I was in Warsaw. Now, granted, I have made a ton of new friends. I've done a lot of collaborations. I've networked with a ton of people. A lot of the foreigners that come into Warsaw now, I'm their first point of contact. So I thought about moving for a while now. There was a couple of options that I had. I thought about maybe moving to Łódź, Poznań, or to one of the cities outside of the center, to like Praga or something. Łódź is a cool developing city, and I have a couple of friends there. The problem is that I think it's not that developed yet, and I think I would get extremely bored living there. The only reasons why I would move there are if the cost of living in Warsaw got so high that I couldn't afford it anymore, which I don't think will happen. I would move there for a woman. If I had a girlfriend and she happened to be from Łódź and I was very happy with her, that could be a potential as well. Like I would be open to moving. But for living, I still think it was missing a few parts. I still think it needs to develop a little more. I really liked the location because it's only about an hour train ride outside of Warsaw. So if I had to come into the city to do my business, it wouldn't take that long. But I don't know, I just didn't really feel it. There was a kind of a depressive vibe in the air when the weather was kind of And now that winter is coming, I can imagine that it being really, really terrible. And since most of my friends are in Warsaw, it didn't really make that much sense for me to go to Łódź. So if you guys are curious about living in other countries like this, one of the most effective ways is to get a second citizenship. There are many countries that offer citizenship based on family, based on real estate or investment, and many other options. One of my best friends, Rafael at The Wealthy Expat, this is all he focuses on. He talks about different passports that you can apply to, and his company has helped hundreds of people get second citizenships all around the world. He speaks English, Spanish, German, Russian, and his Polish is getting pretty good too. So if you guys wanted to explore your options for second citizenship, I highly recommend you checking out his channel. Poznań is an interesting city because I heard a lot of really good things before traveling, and I have to say that most of the things were correct. It was actually an amazing city, probably the most beautiful city that I've seen here in Poland. It is a college town, but there's also a lot of old folk there, and because it has an extremely liberal culture, the people are a lot more open and friendly and smiley, even the old people, which is something that surprised me a lot. But as I was discovering the city, I noticed that, wow, this place is beautiful. There's so many parks, and I really like the vibe of the city to visit, but I couldn't really picture myself living there. There was something about the vibe that was a little too liberal for me. I could not see myself calling it home as much as I really like the city. On top of that, Poznań is very far from Warsaw. It's about like a 3-hour train ride. So if I wanted to come into the city to do any business, it would take a full day. You know, that it was a little bit too far for me. But what I mean by too liberal, it felt a little too open. The relationship dynamic that I saw there was a little bit too liberal and too feminist for me. I'm not saying that there's anything bad with it. It just didn't feel like that would be a good place for me to find a partner either. Maybe it's just me prejudging, but you know, if you've traveled to enough places like I have, you know, you have to make these snap judgments. Third option was just to move to a different place in Warsaw. And I saw a couple of buildings. When I was living in Kraków, I lived in this building called Shed. They are a company, they have buildings all over Europe, and they just made one in Warsaw. The Shed in Warsaw is crazy. This place is like Hogwarts, man. They have so many different common areas. They have media rooms. Their cinema room is crazy nice. They had a really big gym as well. It was everything that I wanted from the original Shed, but they made it like 10 times better. Problem was, when I was walking around, it felt too much like a dorm. When I was 28, 29, I think that was a little bit more acceptable. But now that I'm 30, I'm like, okay, this vibe is a little bit too young for me. I feel like the old guy in the club. My original apartment was in a great location. The problem was that it was mainly filled with older people and couples and families. So I didn't really get to know my neighbors like that because everybody was pretty much minding their own business. Wonder also has another location near the river, but it's mainly filled with Ukrainians and digital nomads. I don't really hang out with Ukrainians as a group. No problem with them. It's just I'm in Poland, right? So I would prefer to get to know more Polish people. And a lot of the digital nomads that live in Wonder in both of these locations usually go away for the winter. So that didn't really make any sense either. However, I was researching and I found a building in Praga that kind of had the best of both worlds. It was a co-living building with a few dorms like Shed, but it also had genuine apartments. It had a lot of really good social areas as well. And instead of having 700 people in one building, it was only 50 people. That to me sounded like the perfect situation. And on top of that, it was right next to a university. I don't go to really university events, but I think when you're next to a university, there's a creative energy that comes from like students in general that I really like. And I think it also feeds into my creative energy, which is why if you guys saw the videos that I was making in Kraków, because I was surrounded by the energy, I feel like those videos were actually a lot better than the ones that I have been making in Warsaw. But the fact that it was outside of the city in Praga, it had a totally different vibe. My subscribers were right when they told me that when you step outside of the center of the city, the vibe completely changes. I feel like it's a really good balance because it doesn't feel like a super small city, but it does kind of feel suburby because it's quite quiet, especially on the weekends and at night. If I want to go to the city, it's only 5 more minutes by tram than my old place. It's not that much further out. The rent was a lot cheaper. Now that winter's coming around, I really wanted to be in a social area and a co-living situation again. I really like the co-living idea. I just enjoy living with a tribe, with a community. During the winter, if you don't have friends and people around you, it can get very depressing. So that's ultimately why I made the move. I like being in the big city because to a certain extent, it inspires you. Every time I used to come to Warsaw when I was living in Kraków, I would just always leave the city super inspired because it's growing very quickly. I met a lot of really cool people who are doing great things. I'm more of like a slower paced, chill kind of person. So I felt like when I was in the city center, I was working, hustling. I wasn't really happy doing it. It was just kind of a phase in my life that I had to complete. And some people really like the constant stimulation of, you know, a big city, but to me, it was a little bit too much. I didn't think that I was gonna like Praga because before coming here, I heard a lot of bad things like, oh, it's super dangerous, it's really sketchy. But then when I asked more deeply on it, what makes Praga so dangerous? And they're like, oh, you know, you'll just kind of see some homeless people walking around, but they never get really violent. And I'm like, okay, that's not really unsafe, right? After I experienced what safety was like in Colombia, anything that they tell to me here in Poland, I'm like, okay, it's not really that big of a deal. Women are perfectly comfortable walking or running at night with headphones on, right? So that's how I know that it's actually still quite a safe place. And after traveling to all these different cities, I realized that Warsaw is just a great city and is doing so well for me in my career that it doesn't really make sense for me to move right now. I like this neighborhood a lot. I don't really want to move around anymore. So I can see myself being here for maybe even 2 to 3 years, but we're gonna have to see what happens. I highly recommend you guys watch this video next.